advertised Harvey, the native New Yorkers who moved on, something like that. So I'll tell you about being a native New Yorker moving on, but it's just quick. I was born in the South Bronx, but escaped in the 60s to go to school upstate, and then moved to Boston, and then now I live in Portland, Oregon, but I still work full-time in Boston. So that's right, I'll tell you more later. Harvey wanted me to do my usual rambling discussion about employment. Not so much about best practice, which Paul talked about, you guys know about IPS, but more about where does employment and unemployment fit in to the world of mental health, and why, in some ways, doesn't it fit in very well, or it hasn't progressed as much as you think it might, given what we know about it. So I have a lot of stuff here. I'm not going to go through all of it, partly because of the time, but also partly gets boring. Now, Harvey yelled at me. NYAPRS, right? NYAPRS. I've been dealing with Harvey for 20 years. I never get NYAPRS. My idea is he should come up with a better acronym. Anyway, NYAPRS. It's going to be on the NYAPRS website, so a lot of the stuff you can feel free to download. All the information is derivative. Harvey came up with this title. Well, I came up with this title many years ago. It was actually a title I wrote for an article I was writing about peer support and consumer involvement in mental health. Without this still, if everyone's already doing it, how come it never gets done? The interesting thing is that you can pick almost any topic in human services and use that title. If everybody's already doing it, how come it never gets done? And it fits. So I use it like all the time. When you're talking about employment, housing, clinical treatment, whatever. And Harvey decided to add still, which is true. How come it still never gets done? So basically going to be a variety of reflections about where employment fits in. And where's Stephen? I can't see. You have a mic? If anybody wants to interrupt, I'm not going to, it's not the kind of thing where I'll talk and then ask questions, but if you have questions or want to argue with something in the middle, raise your hand and Stephen will interrupt me. All right? Got that, Stephen? Yep. Good work. I'm facing the wrong way here. This is also a title of an article I wrote years ago, but it's still the same issue. Is that I've done a lot of work. My background is not so much mental health per se, but I worked for the vocational rehabilitation in Massachusetts for a lot of years. I'll tell you more about that in the later section. But we did a lot around mental health training, including a 6-week training course that we had people from all over New England, both rehab and mental health people, come. And this before a lot of clubhouses around. We actually took them to Fountain House for a week. So there was a lot of stuff going on. This is the 70s and early 80s. But it always frustrated me that when we talk about employment, people in the mental health side would say, well, it's a good idea, but what, the usual. What about the stress? What about, is it too soon? You don't want to push people too much? That kind of stuff. And to me, it seemed kind of obvious, so I just, in my kind of South Bronx way, I came up with this title. And I basically came up with the title and wrote an article around it, to tell you the truth. That I think work is bad for people with mental illness. What about poverty, unemployment, and social isolation? And to some extent, the whole issue with employment can be encapsulated in mental health in this regard. For all the problems that employment can cause, and work is not ideal for it. Has anybody ever had a bad job? Yeah. Right. I want to ask you if you're still in a bad job. So an actual job can be terrible for your mental health. So the issue is not working is great all the time, no matter what you do, no matter how your boss treats you or anything like that. That's not the point. The point is that the alternative of long-term unemployment is, to my mind, indisputably worse for people with long-term physical and mental health than working. So my point of view, and even though I have background with the rehab, part of my work history is I was the deputy director of a large mental health center in Washington State when I moved out west. And one of the things that I would nag people about, both training and then an administrative role, is that dealing with long-term unemployment is a clinical necessity for mental health systems of care. So on a simple level, one of the things my staff were instructed to do, just like, you know, like on service plans, you have to write a crisis plan and a discharge. People had to write an employment plan for anybody unemployed longer than 3 months. They didn't have to get them a job right then because they might not have wanted to work. But you had to develop, you had to make a priority of service helping people deal with long-term unemployment. Because not dealing with long-term unemployment, apart from the view about works good for you or what do we know about IPS and evidence-based practice, long-term unemployment, not dealing with long-term unemployment is clinical malfeasance. And that's the part that people don't get. For all the stuff all over the country, including New York State, who get IPS, who believe in evidence-based practice, people in mental health systems of care, I'm talking at an administrative and a policy level, basically don't get that not dealing with long-term unemployment is unethical. Paul and I were talking a little bit about, you know, why it's so hard for things to change. My own sense of it is employment stuff will really change at a drastic level when consumers and families really make it a priority advocacy point of view. I don't see it as a priority advocacy point of view around the country. I think we're at the stage, which is progress, where consumers themselves and family members and advocates say, I don't want this program, I don't want the program at Hutchins Mental Health to say, I'm not going to help you get a job because you're too sick. So we're sort of at that stage where that's unacceptable. What we're not at, and I think it's because there's very little grassroots advocacy, is to say, I don't know how many people are in the mental health system in New York State, thousands, you know, many thousands of people. 85% of the people in the system are unemployed, adults in the system are unemployed. That's unacceptable. And I don't feel that even at a place like NYAPRS, there's certainly some attention to it, but I certainly don't feel that kind of energy that I feel about other things like trauma-informed care, for example. And in other states, there's not even this. So, I mean, in some ways, you got your head in the game. NYAPRS, one of the things I mentioned with NYAPRS is that they're one of the few, I wouldn't quite call it grassroots, but semi-grassroots organizations that at least have employment on their agenda in terms of peer-to-peer discussion. So that's a real plus. I travel a lot. My wife sent me this quote once. I didn't take it personally. I feel so miserable without you, it's almost like having you here. So, that's my contact information, but it'll be on the NYAPRS website. But my email is joseph.maroney@weedisone@gmail.com. And my cell phone is 503-490-2072. So if you want to email or text or call to complain, feel free. Look who's here in the time there.
How did you get the name right this year?
Well, I got a little coaching before you came. I have a lot of quotes in my presentation, but when people hear it, I have a lot of quotes. They think of them as kind of cutesy, you know, inspirational, you know, you can be whatever you want to be, you know. This is more my style, you know, growing up in the South Bronx. Lily Tomlin, who most of you know, said, no matter how cynical you become, it's never enough to keep up. So that's kind of the way I am at this stage of my life. And then my other philosopher friend, who is myself, said, all change is difficult no matter how long you put it off. One of the dilemmas of big system change, and you'll see it in New York, you'll see it in every state, is everybody thinks you can plan your way out of the difficulties of change. You know, that if you do enough planning, my favorite, not to name names, but I used to chuckle at the famous New York State MISC. And what does it stand for? The most integrated service?
Setting coordinating.
Yeah, but it wasn't alone, but I just like, because it gave me my thinking, and one way we're doing Mike Hogan was commissioner then, and I said, Mike, I think the MISC missed. So, part of the issue is not that you can't do planning, it's that change is hard. And you need to do a little planning, but basically you got to get to it. This is my philosophy, period. And I spent a lot of years doing a lot of training, sort of what I call QCQ training. You know, people with disabilities are just like you and me, you know, that kind of stuff. Don't look at people by their label. And it dawned on me after several years when we started talking specifically about employment, that I thought that people were not direct enough about employment. I hear, even 2016, I hear people say people should have the opportunity to choose work. work should be an option for people. I believe if people can work, people should work. And I spent most of my work life and my intellectual life in terms of the work I've done, in terms of collecting a lot of information to know that people with various disabilities, including mental illness, can work. We know that. We've heard that a lot already. We've heard that over the years with NYAPRS. But yet we kind of whip out a little bit and say, well, everybody's got to make their own choice. Recovery. Everybody becomes a philosopher. Recovery is a journey. It's not a destination. All that kind of stuff. To my mind, recovery and citizenship are connected. And part of the goal of recovery, to my mind, is not just, I hear a lot about dignity, but from my kind of end, I'm much more worried about citizenship. That people become fully embraced citizens in any society, but we're talking about the U.S. And part of it is I think, work is a social responsibility. Now, and I have no fantasies about the real world. We all know, some of us are probably in this position, where people work full-time and are still poor. People still have a lot of, so it's not that work's going to solve the problems. But I really do believe as a core value that if people can work, and we've said for years that people with serious mental illness can work, people should work. Work shouldn't be, a particular job should be an option, or when I work versus when I go to school, I want to quit a job. All those are options. But people should work. I think it gets murky here, because I think we've heard a lot, certainly when you heard, when you saw the movie Healing Voices, and you hear a lot of panels. There's certainly a lot of stuff that's gone on in mental health that basically hasn't been concerned enough about the effect on the people getting their services, whether you've been hospitalized or whether you're getting outpatient services. However, I think if we're talking about social policy, and I'm talking to you folks as social advocates, not activists, not so much mental health policy, or that's kind of where you are. But one of the good things about NYAPRS is that you really become vehicles for social change. And as social activists, you have to worry about social policy outcomes. And to my mind, social policy outcomes have to include outcomes beyond just personal quality of life measures and personal choice. Not all desirable social policies are totally determined by personal choice. The best example I get, dropout. New York State, like most states, it's legal to drop out of school 16, once you're over 16. So that's people's choice, it's legal. We do everything in our power. You can read state websites and Department of Education websites that say, dropout prevention efforts. We want to stop this. This is a poor choice people making. Looking at homeless stuff. A lot of people supposedly choose homelessness, but we still say, geez, is that really helpful for people? So, when we talk about employment as a social policy outcome, we have to take it out of the total construct of, well, it's only a valuable outcome if people say they want to work. Having people with disabilities employed in the community, achieving full citizenship, to my mind, is a social policy outcome that we need to work towards. Now, that doesn't mean that when people say, well, let me put it this way. I understand all the ins and outs of a lot of policies, so it's not a surprise to me why a lot of people are ambivalent about working. People like Paul Margolis and I and other people who write grants throw out this number that 70% of people with mental illness say they want to work. If you're a case manager, 70% of your clients don't come in and say, get me a job right away. Now, if you say, geez, would you ever like to work in your life, have a family, have a house, have money? But see, I'd like to go that. But you say, well, I can get a job right now. People say, well, wait a minute. So, the issue is not that people are ambivalent, because there's a lot of practical, sensible reasons why people are ambivalent. Social, healthcare, benefits, they try to work before, it hasn't worked out, they don't trust you, they've got a poor employment program in their area. The part that we need to deal with from a staff point of view is to say, people come in very legitimately with ambivalence. What are we doing to help people deal with that ambivalence and to frankly engage them and get them in a trusting relationship in a way to show them we can help and not just put them out again. As I mentioned, I have a lot of data which you can download. I'll mention it briefly. Long-term unemployment, even in the absence of prior mental health or physical health problems, is extremely deleterious to a person's physical and mental health. There's a ton of studies I have on my computer, but I'm not going to show you. 73 epidemiological studies from 1938 to 2016 that show a pretty strong correlation. It's not cause and effect, but a very strong correlation that when people are unemployed a long time, even when they've never had any psychiatric or physical problems prior to the unemployment, that long-term unemployment, in fact, exacerbates those situations and often leads to physical and psychiatric problems. That's obviously connected with things like poverty and self-image and all kinds of stuff. But that we need to think of long-term unemployment as a clinical issue. And as I mentioned, one of the things when I ran a mental health center was to deal with long-term unemployment equivalent to crisis planning. People had it on the service plan. I don't know how many service plans, I'm sure it's true in New York State too. Employment's one of the domains, that you look at. When I came to the mental health center, I'd say it was over 90% of the service plans under employment said, client does not wish to address at this time. Now, once again, I'm not talking about somebody's ambivalent about working and you say, I'm going to get your job whether you want to work or not. That's not what I mean. I'm saying that you have to deal with long-term unemployment, similar to a crisis, just like when you write crisis plans. Most people you write crisis plans for don't say, I'm in a crisis right now. But you say, well, let's plan ahead. Let's think about what would happen. Here's just the New York State figures. I'll mention again later. Everybody's figures are bad, but New York State does better in one area. These are figures from SAMHSA, the Mental Health Administration. The latest one down on their website is 2014. It might have improved a little bit, but these have not moved up a lot over many years. Even pre and post recession, the swing was actually within 2 or 3 percentage points. Overall, in terms of people in the adult mental health system in the U.S., about 18% have any kind of employment during the year 2014. New York State, that figure was a little over 15%, so less than the average. Looking for work or employed, that is unemployed but looking or employed, that's where New York State at least had some better figures. The national average is 39%. New York State is almost 50% of the clients in the system were either looking for work or employed. So that meant if these figures are not necessarily totally accurate, but if that meant that the overall employment rate was 50%, and people looking for it, that means that about a third of the clients were looking for work and were unsuccessful that year. So that says something about how we help people too when they are interested in working. This is interesting considering there's a big effort in terms of access to evidence-based supported employment. My hunch is this number has gone up a little bit in the last 2 years, but the national figure for access to evidence-based supported employment, basically IBS, is about 2%. So about 2% of the adult mental health population has the ability to access something that looks like evidence-based supported employment. That figure in New York State in 2014 was 0.4, not 4%, 0.4%. So less than half of 1% of the adult population. My hunch is just because there's been a lot of effort, it's gone up a little bit. But I would say at best it might be at that 2%. Mike Hogan, who used to be a former commissioner as well as in Ohio, said increasing employment for people with mental illness is one of the most urgent priorities in today's mental health system. So of course, being a 69-year-old crank, I'm saying if it's one of the urgent priorities, we haven't done very well with it. It's either not urgent or not a priority because it hasn't moved much. Ed Knight, who met, I don't know, a lot of you was young. Anyway, a lot of people should know Ed Knight. He was one of the stars of the mental health consumer movement in New York State. And he's a psychologist. He has one of the usual horror stories, about being institutionalized and working with little blocks, saying he wants to be a psychologist and people laughing at him. And he said, what drives me up the wall is the intentional teaching of fear of having any kind of meaningful life because you'll be compensated or stress sensitive. The most stressful thing in the world is being a couch potato with nothing to do, nowhere to go, and no one to talk to. And he lives it, he believes it. I think about you folks as social activists, social policy activists, and the best simple description I've seen of change. This is a group called the Corporation of Supportive Housing, which a lot of you know about, does a lot of work with homeless folks. They wrote this monograph a few years ago, I think it's like 13 years ago now. But I really found their little 5 elements make sense. And as you look in terms of your impact at NYAPRS, in terms of anything, I'm talking about employment, but if you're looking at housing, if you're looking at incarceration or whatever, these are the things to look at, am I having an impact? Is there a change in power? You know, do people have more control over their lives? Do people in the area that you want to affect, say employment, have more control, more influence? Change in money. Money is a funny thing. One of the issues with employment is there's not enough money devoted towards it. On the other hand, in some areas where there is money devoted towards it, the outcomes are not better either. So money is one of those things that's a necessary but not sufficient condition. You can't starve the beast. But by the same time, just throwing money out and we have something else changing is probably not going to increase. Part of that has to do with, I don't know how many of you manage programs or run programs. We spend a lot of time at a policy level trying to incentivize things like employment. If you're running a big program, you're very willing to leave a fair amount of money on the table to avoid changing your program. It's just hard. You have to change staffing, you have to change administration, you have to change information systems. So I think one of the failures of a lot of social policy at a state or county level is they say, we'll incentivize employment. We'll give people an extra $5,000 if they get people a job or something. That doesn't really motivate. It's a good message, but that doesn't really motivate big systems to change. Changing skills, I mean, that's part of what the Columbia folks are doing, trying to help people develop better skills. You know, one of the barriers to good evidence-based supporting employment has nothing to do with philosophy. It has to do with a lot of people doing it historically have not been really good about job development and employer outreach. That's why when what was then Dartmouth, but is now affiliated with WestAd. That's why the IPS people. That's why the IPS people, when they changed their fidelity scale a few years ago, they included a lot of emphasis on the skills of the employment staff, having to be out there, having to engage people. Because that's not unusual in employment services. There's a lot of bad employment services in the country. Here's what is unusual with mental health. When employment services are bad, certain people with mental illness, the assumption is that people with mental illness are really crazy and really disabled. The assumption is that people don't have the skills to help them like they should. The assumption is, wow, these folks are really sick. So that's the dangerous element of that. It's not that there isn't a lot of problems in workforce and intellectual disabilities and in welfare to work about poor skilled employment staff. It's that often the clients get blamed when the staff is skilled. Changing ideas and values. I'm much more interested in behavior than values. But there is a point to say, is there a value in a mental health system of care in New York State? In employment, more importantly, dealing with long-term unemployment. And changes in habits. Once again, how do we treat long-term unemployment on service planning? What kind of messages do we give people about employment? How do you know, one of the hard parts is, you know, I was doing this presentation. It wasn't strictly about employment, but I was talking about stuff about staff consumer roles. And I said one of my values is that professional staff shouldn't try to control people, but they should try to influence people. And people started yelling at me, saying, "You have no right to influence us." You know, I said, if I don't try to influence you, I'm not doing my job. And I'm also from New York. I mean, I'm from New York. Every conversation is an influence discussion. You know, Ann and I are presumably of equal power. And we argue about, or you know, try to influence each other about what movie to see, what to eat for dinner, when to have sex, whatever. You know, we're always trying to influence everybody. You only really try to influence people when you do have some fairly equal relationships. When you don't have, when you don't feel there is any kind of equality in power, you try to control people. The other way of looking at change, John Carter has nothing to do with human services. He's a famous theorist about businesses. But he really puts together I think a nice summary about what he calls about why change efforts fail. He's talking about private companies, but you can talk about human services just as well. He says, number one, and this is, I say, the major problem, people don't establish a greater sense of urgency. I do not see in New York State or most mental health systems I deal with any sense of urgency about dealing with long-term unemployment. I see a certain amount of interest, certain amount of discussion. I don't see any sense of, wow, this is something we really got to deal with in a way that we, frankly, are willing to deal with outpatient treatment, in a way we're willing to deal with homelessness and housing. I don't feel that urgency. Not creating enough guiding coalition, that's one thing you're ahead of the game here. Use these fancy words, but it's basically having a group of people who can really try to influence people. Lacking a vision, where do we want to get to? Under-communicating a vision by the factor of 10, that to me goes to a sense of urgency. Not just, wow, we believe in evidence-based practice, we have IPS, we fund folks like Paul and his colleagues go out and do training, but what's really going to happen? What kind of change do we want to see in employment? Not removing obstacles, what are the obstacles? Some of the things like benefits planning. Let me tell you, it's not a secret. We all know that things like benefits are a major obstacle to people feeling good about employment. Whether it's keeping Medicaid or Social Security. Removing those obstacles does not necessarily encourage people to work. When people are encouraged to work, removing those obstacles is a way to ease the transition. Healthcare is a good example. Everybody's, over the years, any kind of survey you had of people with disabilities, when you're talking about work and fears about working, number one was loss of healthcare. Now states that have a Medicaid buy-in, like New York State, like Minnesota states, Washington, that have very good Medicaid buy-in programs, they haven't seen the upsurge in people using it for employment. Best example from a big social policy, I don't know whether you're a right winger or left winger, I'm kind of a total left winger. If you go to Canada, which has a good national health care system, their employment rates are worse than ours. So things like benefits are obstacles, but by removing them in and of themselves, they don't change the way people move ahead in their lives. You got to create some wins, and I think once again, you folks you're good about celebrating victory. Obviously, declaring victory too soon. I mean, one of the issues around employment is we've had strong evidence for basically IPS, evidence-based supported employment, going on 25 years now. And yet the needle towards employment has only moved a little. And you got to anchor changes in the agency's culture. Culture is a funny thing, but for example, I'll mention it. This is when people get mad at me in the group. When I was the associate director of Large Mental Health Center, the managed care company said, "What are you going to create? A consumer advisory group?" I said, "That was a crazy idea. I'm not going to create a consumer advisory group." I said, what I want to do is to have more people with history of mental illness get hired as case managers, as job coaches, as whatever, therapists. And we want people with history who are clients on the board of directors. And I wanted them to get nominated and elected, and that's what we did. That to me was a culture shift that's much more powerful, or it seemed to me, and I think there was some staying power, even though I'm not there anymore. That's much more powerful than saying we value peers, we value consumers, so we listen to them more. That's certainly a good step from not caring about what they say. But that's very different than an agency culture that says, we value people with disabilities, we value people with mental illness, we think they can work, we think they're an important part of our potential workforce, so we want to hire them, not just as peer supporters, not just in an advisory group, but and of course, when I've got a lot of problems, and of course what happened, the first self-identified client who got hired got arrested the first week for stalking another client. So, and everybody said, I see what happened, that's what happened. And I said, look, The last time you hired an Italian, it didn't work out. You stopped hiring Italians. You know, the last time you hired a woman, it didn't work out. You know, at some stage, hiring is always a crapshoot, but we got beyond that.
Hey,
And that's what we're saying. Okay.
Hey, Joe.
Yes?
What's IPS?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go right here. IPS is evidence-based support employment, individual placement and support. The folks at Columbia, what's the Columbia Institute called? Center for Practice Innovation? Yeah, I'm sorry, I thought because it's been around. It's the most well-researched support employment model for people with serious mental illness. Basically comes out of Dartmouth. But it's basically support employment. The big difference in this IPS, evidence-based support employment, with any other kind of support employment, that, for example, with DD or whatever, has been the real emphasis on clinical and vocational integration, which is very, very hard. Because even, I don't know what your experience is in New York State, Paul, but even when it happens physically, even when the employment staff are included, they're often treated like the kids at the Thanksgiving table. You know, they'll say, Bruce, what's happening with John? You know, you give a little update about John. The intent of it is to say, focus on employment should be one thing to inform the whole clinical treatment plan. It doesn't happen very often. When it happens, it's very powerful, but that's the intent. But anyway, it's evidence-based, and you can talk to Paul Margolis right here for more information. I love my quote. John Galbraith said, given the choice between changing and improving is not necessary, most people get busy with the proof. And John Cage, the composer, said, I can't understand why people are frightened of new ideas. I'm frightened by the old ones. So. I was thinking, I was doing one of the conferences here, I think it was at the Neville 2 years ago. My wife Ann she was doing stuff in the field too. And there was a presentation I went to on thinking outside the box. And it was a pretty boring presentation, you know, and it was all this stuff there. And they did the thing about the 9 dots, you know, and how to connect the dots without going outside the box, which I still can't do. But anyway, the person doing it said, look, and this is thinking outside the box, you know, kind of triumphantly. And my friend Dan, there were about 50 people, my friend Dan, who was sitting next to another friend, said, sort of in a loud whisper, she said, damn it, it's taken me 20 years to get Joe inside the box. The last thing I want is him outside for the inside. This is where I'm not cosmic. When I talk about outcomes or employment as an important thing, people start preaching to me about recovery, and they'll get sort of cosmic. Recovery is a journey, it's not a destination. It's, I think you have to separate, I'm a person X, in my own quote-unquote journey of recovery. I have to decide that for myself. I'm the Office of Mental Health, and I believe in recovery. Then part of my responsibility is to say, how am I creating a system where people's journey gets them somewhere? Money, housing, employment. So 2 separate stuff. This is not saying you can't make decisions for your own life. This is saying, when we're talking about social policy and OMH or any other mental health system, recovery has to mean getting somewhere. So it may be a journey, but to my mind, if you never get anywhere, it becomes a treadmill. It's employment and social policy change has to be different than just everybody being pleased with whatever state they're in. Partially because we have responsibilities at a social level for the world at large. Partially because we have responsibility to help expand people's horizons. Because people, and it's not just people with mental illness, people who have been deprived of a lot of stuff tend to have very small horizons, and it's part of the job of the system that's supposed to help people expand their horizons of what's possible, what's doable. There's a lot of fancy stuff about motivational interviewing. Here's my summary. People only change when 3 things are present. You got to give people a sense of hope. You got to give people concrete help, and you have to hassle the crap out of them. Nobody changes without hope, help, and hassling. Now, hassling has to mean different things depending on your relationship. Some people get hassled by, if you will, nagging them. Some people get hassled by kicking their rear end. Some people get hassled by listening to them a lot and keep bringing back this issue of employment. You have to start with hope. You have to give people help. Hope is shallow unless you give people something concrete. I'm willing to help you do this. But frankly, everybody, whether it's Joe Moroni, whether it's Paul Mongoli, whether it's Harvey Rosenthal, whether it's OMH, every person and system needs some element of hassling to get out of there, whatever the comfort zone might be. So I think part of the job of engagement is in fact to say, if I create a sense of hope, what concrete help can I give the person, and what's my strategy for hassling that person to get to that point? I think basically, you hear a lot of talk extensively about engagement. My take on engagement and motivation is that engagement and motivation has to be the staff's job initially, because you all know, I don't have to tell you, but in the world at large, I have to tell people, most people with mental illness are just out there living their lives. They're not clients of a mental health system, you know? So it's not like a mental OMH is dealing with everybody with mental illness. People who use public mental health systems usually use it because they've had problems, and often a lot of them are poor, and that's why it's a subset of people with mental illness. So motivation and engagement, to my mind, is the staff's job initially. But then at some stage, and you know, it's hard to say when, at some stage the person getting help needs to own their own challenges and opportunities. You know, you can't live a person's life for them, but initially, I think too often in mental health, people have hidden behind staff have hidden behind personal responsibility and let people just found them. But early on, it's our job as a staff person to engage people, to do what we can. We can't just, you know, big issue is once again, I'll go back to my own experience, but this has research behind it. Big issue at the mental health center where people are not showing up for appointments, right? And that's a big issue everywhere. So I suggested, I'm simple, right? Well, why don't we remind them the day before? Oh my God. It was the earlier days of email. Everybody had an email, get this, everybody had an email, but no one was allowed to know it. And I said, well, that doesn't make any sense. The doctors didn't want their emails out. Well, that's where people might call us and interrupt us. So this stuff is not like very fancy, but I think it's important to have a system and a staff level to say, early on I have to basically own the problem or help people deal with the problem that they own. And at some stage, part of my helping has to move to people dealing with their own problems and opportunities. Now, I was like, when I talk about hassling, I think about Billie Holiday. I don't know how old most of you are. She was a blues singer, not a he. And she said to me, loving your life and some food in your stomach before you hold still some damn fool's lecture about how to behave. So this is, to my mind, you know, a lot of people in the field think they're trying to be hopeful to people, but I think a lot of people are what I call shallow optimists when they're dealing with people who've had a lot of problems, and they're not really a sense of hope. Ultimately, you create hope in people by creating a trusting relationship. But early on, it's really sort of initial engagement, you know, it's the outreach piece. And the way I distinguish hope versus optimism is a pat on the back. You know, it's the kind of person who someone comes to them and says, well, I might want to work, but it's been 20 years, I didn't have a good experience, I don't know anything, I'm not very good. And the person you're talking to, you know, says, Tony, I know you can do it. Now, my reaction would be I want to slap the sucker. You know, if I could do it, I would have done it. So I'm not talking about that, you know, you can do it, you know, rah, rah. Hope is really communicating that you care. Once again, more importantly by your actions than your words, but early on by your words. Communicating that you're around, that you have some help to offer. This isn't and communicating that you understand their problem and that you'll be there for them. So you really have to deal with people in a way that in fact is going to communicate to them that you're not shallow about what they can do with their lives, but in fact that you have an ability to help them move ahead. I think so. Kick out? Yeah. Did you kick it out? All right.
I'm not the one moving around up here.
Did I kick it out? All right. Let's see where it was in my heart. I have it printed out, so I want to say what I was going to be saying here. Oh. What's the word there? Oh, yeah. The other thing related to that is the sense of, I don't believe in, well, I should say this. I don't care about stigma. I worry about discrimination. I'm a child of the 60s, and any of you were around for the Civil Rights Acts, the Civil Rights Revolution, but the acts in the 60s. There was no discussion about attitude change towards minority folks or women. The discussion was about discrimination, housing, employment, education. So you know, when it comes to this, I'm a libertarian. You can stigmatize whoever you want. I don't want you to discriminate. So I think when we talk about employment, I think we spend. Oh, I'm good.
All right, let me just get it back to you.
I'll do it. There we go.
All right, good.
I went ahead, but that's all right. So when we talk about this, discrimination, it's not that stigma doesn't play into it, but I really think we focus too much on things like stigma education. Most stigma education, or education about reducing stigma, doesn't work very well. What works is personal contact, or let me say, positive personal contact. One of the virtues of employment, in terms of looking at attitude shift in society, is that when you deal with people who might have whatever the label, whether a worker, someone in the community, someone serving you, someone working beside you, that's a much more powerful message than all the statistics about people with mental illness are not inclined to be violent, they're more likely to be victims of violence. People just don't incorporate that. They incorporate personal experience. And so, work to me is not the most important part of a person's life. I mean, I hope you all have great fantasy lives, recreation, relationships, whatever. But work is something that all of us take for granted, or as a possibility at least, that in the mental health field we kind of treat as kind of an odd option. You know, it's there. We think about, even evidence-based employment, we think about it as a service intervention. We don't think about it as employment as a piece of citizenship, as a piece of recovery. So I don't think of work. There are lots of people who, you know, I think about a lot of the jobs that are gone now, the big manufacturing jobs like in Michigan at the auto plants. A lot of people didn't like those jobs, but paid a lot of money, good health benefits, so they kind of might have gone through it mindlessly and then went hunting, fishing, did family stuff. You know, someone of my age growing up in the 60s, we sort of look for jobs as a piece of self-fulfillment. And that's great, but now some people just want a job, just want money. Once again, people get cosmic on me when they talk about employment. They say, what do I mean about work? Do I mean doing something productive? I mean getting a job. I think things like volunteer work are very powerful for people, for their own movement ahead. I think it's very powerful for people to engage in volunteer work, to try different things. I just don't think that's the end result of a job. You know, people have to make their own decisions. But at a system level, when we're looking at employment outcomes, we can't look at volunteer work. I was dealing with a state that included, they had a data system that measured employment. And two of the items of measuring employment were attending church regularly and doing culturally appropriate activities. I don't know, I mean, I can't know what they both meant, but that's not, they must be both very good outcomes, but they shouldn't be an employment data element. Pat Deegan, a lot of you know Pat Deegan, right? Yeah, you know, she's more eloquent at night, I mean, who I mentioned earlier. But Ed's probably more of a social activist, and Pat's the type of person that, you know, people take out the handkerchiefs and cry, you know, when they hear. She doesn't talk about employment all that much, but there are a couple of things here. She said, life lived within the confines of the human service and rehabilitation landscape is a life in which the freedom to become and make your own future is diminished. And once again, when I talk about employment and that people should work, I don't talk about it from the sense of, you know, Social Security savings or anything like that. I'm not worried about, I got 10 minutes, that means. I'm going to think, oh, let's see. Because I don't have a clock, so I have to quickly. I'm not worried about, the Social Security expenditures. There's, even in the Catskills, probably within 50 miles of here, there's more companies stealing more money from the government than every person on Social Security. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about people choosing to diminish their own lives. When I was at the mental health center, people always said, like, trick questions. What are your values, Joe? So actually, like Martin Luther, I tasted these outside my door. As I said, I worry about discrimination, not stigma. I worry about behavior, not attitude. I worry about citizenship and civil rights, not consumerism. I worry about more power control, not consumerism per se. I worry about people being competent that you deal with, less about courtesy, although you want both. I worry things about love, relationships, sex, not interventions and services. And I worry about things like economic engagement, jobs and careers, not better vocational programs. As I mentioned about stigma reduction, this is, Pat Corrigan is someone in Chicago who does a lot of, he has the whole Stigma Institute. And he's sort of into stigma, if you will. But even he, in this article from, what year is that, 2001, said stigma reduction, the ability to change behavior through education in this area is negligible. So to my mind, anti-stigma campaigns are basically a waste of money. Because they don't accept that. They make people feel better, the people doing it feel better. You're much better throwing your resources into things that engage people in the community, whether it's employment, housing, education. I'm not going to do that. We can't have, I don't want to offend Paul here too much with training. There's a tendency to say you solve all these by training people. Training is the secondary intervention. If you want system change, you got to get going on something and then train people. You can't train people, you got something going. The best quote I read, it's like 20 years old, but it's sort of a management book. And it says you can teach a turkey to climb a tree, but it's easier to hire a squirrel. So, I'll skip that, skip that. Yes, I'm not going to go through the details of this, but folks probably either know or heard about this quadrant approach that gets used around physical and mental health, about co-occurring disorders, and looking at people who have high needs in different areas. Myself and a woman who was the clinical director of Missouri Mental Health came up with this, saying, why don't we look at a quadrant approach towards employment? Because we need to get beyond just IPS, an employment intervention, as the employment goals of our system. And so we look at people who have low to high employment needs and low to high mental health needs. And if you see people with high clinical needs and high employment support needs, you're talking about IPS, evidence-based supported employment. But there are people, just like we know that mental health label doesn't mean you can't work, there are some people who are doing pretty well clinically, but are really poor workers. So they're connected, but they're not equivalent. So what we did here is we tried to encourage people at a system level to think about all their unemployed clients and to think about, if you will, putting them in a box in their head in terms of the employment intervention needed. So, for example, if you have high mental health needs but low employment support needs, you might just take people to I call them resource centers, but one-stops or career centers. If people have high employment needs but low mental health needs, maybe vocational rehabilitation, maybe the clinical integration. Now, I know there are system problems in this state, like other states, in linking with the vocational rehabilitation system. But that's something that you can't just throw up your hands and say, well, they're useless. You have to say, this is something that's interfering with the employment needs of people that I'm trying to help. What I have, and you can, if you download, you can read. I'm not going to go through it. What I have in each of those quadrants, I have a little sort of schema about how would you know they fit into that quadrant. So, for example, people with high employment but low mental health needs. The assessment piece is people who have a work history with gaps in poor job tenure. They have unclear vocational goals. They're not good at interviewing, but they do want to find a job. They may or may not need skill training. They're not quite sure if they're ready for employment. Their mental health issue is fairly stable, hasn't affected employment regularly. And what are the possible interventions? Benefits discussion, having a job placement person, doing a short-term job search skills group, getting skill training, getting peer support. So I have those for each of those quadrants about how would you figure out what niche they fill, and then what would you do? I really encourage folks to think more broadly about employment beyond just evidence-based supported employment, which a group of people need, but that if you really value employment in a mental health setting, where the people you're dealing with, or you yourself if you're a person, where do you fit with that? Let's get through that. Somebody asked me from another state, big shot researcher. He said, isn't it, I have a question for you, Joe. Isn't it better for someone to work 2 or 3 hours a week at something they love than just working 20 hours a week for a job? And I said, no, it's not that. There are lots of people in the world who work at a job that's okay, but do other things they really like. Now, if I'm running an IPF program, if I'm an employment program in New York State, part of my job is to do as good a job as I can, connecting the person, what they tell me they're interested in their own needs, both in terms of a job and environment and working conditions, with the kinds of jobs. But if I'm living in Messina, New York, I have more limited job options. So the choice I make is not be realistic. It's just saying, okay, John, let's look at what's important to you. My family's in Messina. Not a lot of advertising agencies in Messina. You want to be in advertising. You know, what are you willing to compromise, and what are you willing, are you willing to move? Are you willing to start your own business, whatever? So I am real, and I'm a work nag, as I said, not because I think I want somebody working, but because I really think people are basically limiting themselves in terms of their own citizenship opportunities. John Shedd wrote, "A ship in harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are built for." As I said, I'm not going to go through it. Following this slide, I have a summary of various slides out of these 73 I have that show that remaining unemployed is worse for you than being employed is good for you. So I'm a 69-year-old crank at this stage, and I was a younger crank at another stage, but anyway. And I've been in employment for a long time. This bit about what happens if someone, what's the first thing somebody asks you at a party? Number one, I never ask what they do, and that seems kind of impolite. What are you doing? I want to ask other things about it. Number two, I think you can always lie. The reason to work is not what to say to somebody at a party. So, the reason to work, ideally, is that you get a job that's fulfilling, that meets your needs. But from a clinical point of view, the reason to work, that remaining unemployed is worse for you than being employed is good for you. And I just have a couple of this goes back to 1938. Unemployment tends to make people more emotionally unstable than they were previous unemployment. That's 80 years ago. People were understanding this. This was a summary from a book in 1987, but it actually summarizes a lot of the studies. Side effects of unemployment, once again, we're talking about the general population. Increased substance abuse, increased physical problems, increased psychiatric disorders, reduced self-esteem, loss of social contacts, alienation, empathy. So my statement to mental health administrative types is to say, your first rule of thumb in medicine is do no harm, and yet by not attending to long-term unemployment, you're putting people at greater risk for just the kinds of things you say you're trying to ameliorate. It seems counterintuitive to me, but it happens. And there's other things like even the resilient people, 6 months unemployment has major psychological impact. There's all similar stuff. If you're interested, you can download it. Okay, I got you. I'm ending. I've got 2 minutes. Pat Needham once again said it's nearly impossible to make your own future when you're not part of the economic fabric of the culture. And once again, she's not really an employment advocate per se, but I think this is interesting because this is really the point that she says very eloquently. I'm going to skip this. Okay. I'm not going to do my jazz. I have a cutesy thing, but let me tell you some practical things. From a mental health administrative point of view, I made employment an administrative issue, something we talked about with the board of directors every week, not something that just the employment people talk about. When I was the deputy director really pushing the plan, remember I ran a place that started with 2 employment people, we got up to 28 employment people. I spent almost no time with the employment people. I spent all my time with the crisis intervention people, with the docs, with the nurses. So you really have to make an administrative priority. The other important thing, or the 2 important things are the top ones, and I won't mention the other ones. One, everybody who had intake interview at the mental health center got an interview with the employment staff, whether they identified employment or not. And not just to get them a job, but to say, here's the service, where does employment fit into your life? Number 1, we delinked clinical approval from employment. That is when we recruited clients directly, and the message I gave to staff. Sometimes they had to sign, clinical people had to sign off because of Medicaid. None of the clinical staff, doctors, nurses, social workers, outpatient therapists, were allowed to veto a referral to employment. You're not allowed. If you did, some sort of company as the director. But otherwise, anybody that chose employment, working with employment, was allowed, and you had to sign off on the plan. That's acceptable. Those are very powerful. I'm sure people contradicted me and did their own schemes. Those are very important. There's other things which you can read about that talk about some of the system things. Let me just end with a couple of quotes. All right, Stephen? Greek proverb, before practicing virtue, first secure an independent income. I like that. Anytime you think you have influence, try ordering around someone else's dog. Anton Chekhov. You know, I leave this on for the time. I can go 2 weeks without getting a phone call, and when I'm up here, only embarrassed once I was doing a fancy presentation for Medicaid from home, a teleconference, and my cat leaps on the phone right in the middle and cuts me off trying to be fancy. People are far more sincere and good humor at speeding their parting guests than at meeting them. This is the best quote on feedback I ever saw. An old Yiddish proverb: if one person calls you a jackass, ignore him. If a second person calls you a jackass, think about it. If a third person calls you a jackass, get a salad. And for you cosmic people among you, I got this quote from the Buddha, who said, let us rise up and be thankful. So if we didn't learn a lot today, at least we learned a little. If we didn't learn a little, at least we didn't get sick. And if we got sick, at least we didn't die. So let us be thankful. And finally, if any of you like this, I always use this Mark Twain trope. Quote, there's nothing you can say in answer to a compliment. I've been complimented myself a great many times, and they always seem to embarrass me. I always feel they have not said enough. So anyway, thank you. Sorry I had to get started late for people filtering in. Everything's on the analysis website.
Do I disconnect that in 1 month now?
I don't.
Who appointed you?
Well, I'm sorry. Thank you. Very good.